Chronicles of Narnia, Magician's Nephew, Chapter 5. The Deplorable Word. Let's see how long this takes. Ah, no! Oh, looky there. It was meant to be. Chapter 5. The Deplorable Word. I'll just do this. The children were facing one another across a pillar with a bell, where the bell hung, still trembling, though it no longer gave out any note. Suddenly they heard a soft noise from the end of the room, which was still undamaged. They turned quick as lightning to see what it was. One of the robed figures furthest off of all, the woman whom Diggory thought was so beautiful, was rising from its chair. When she stood up, they realized that she was even taller than they had thought, and you could see at once, not only from her crown and robes, but from the flash of her eyes and the curve of her lips, that she was a great queen. She looked round the room and saw the damage, and saw the children, but you could not guess from her face what she thought of either, or whether she was surprised. She came forward with long, swift strides. Who has awakened me? Who has broken the spell? She asked. I think it must have been me, said Diggory. You, said the queen, lying here on his shoulder, a white, beautiful hand, but Diggory could not feel that it was as strong. As strong as steel pincers. But you are only a child, a common child. Anyone can see with a glance that you've not a drop of royal or noble blood in your veins. How did such as you dare to enter this house? We've come from another world by magic, said Polly, who had thought it was high time the queen took some notice of her as well as of Diggory. Is this true? Said the queen, still looking at Diggory, and not giving Polly even a glance. Yeah, it is, said he. The queen put her other hand under his chin and forced it up, so that she could see his face better. Diggory tried to stare back, but he soon had to let his eyes drop. There was something about hers that overpowered him. After he had studied him for well over a minute, she let go of his chin and said, You are no magician. The mark of it is not on you. You must only be the servant of a magician. Is there anyone's... It is another's magic that you have travelled here. I don't know if I like her like that. It was my Uncle Andrew, said Diggory, at the moment not in the room by itself. Oh my. Yes. Anyway, enough play, let's get back at it. At the moment, not in the room itself, but from somewhere very close, there came first a rumbling, and then a creaking, and then a roar of falling masonry, and the floor shook. There is great peril here, said the queen. The whole palace is breaking up. If we are not out in a few minutes, we shall be buried under the ruin. She spoke so calmly, as if she had been merely mentioning the time of day. Come, "Come," she added, and held out a hand to each of the children. Polly, who was disliking the Queen, felt rather sulky. Would not have let her hand be taken if she could have helped it. But the Queen spoke so calmly, her movement though the Queen spoke so calmly, her movements were as quick as thought. Before Polly knew what happened to her left hand, Before Polly knew what was happening, her left hand had been caught in a hand so much larger and stronger than her own that she could do nothing about it. "Well, this is a terrible woman," thought Polly. "She's strong enough to break an arm with one twist, and now she's got my left hand. Well, I can't get away. I can't get out my yellow ring if I try to stretch across and get my right hand into my pocket. Well, I might be able to reach it before she asked me what I was doing. Whatever happens, we mustn't let her know about the rings. I do hope Diggory hasn't the sense to keep his mouth shut. I wish we could get a word with him. I wish I could get a word with him alone." The Queen led them out of the hall. Of Images into a long corridor, and then through a whole maze of halls, stairs, and courtyards. Again and again they heard the parts of the great palace collapsing, sometimes quite close to them. Once a huge arch came thundering down. Only a moment after, they had to pause through it. They had passed through it. The Queen was walking quickly, and the children had to trot to keep up with her, but she showed no sign of fear. Diggory thought she was wonderfully brave and strong. Oh, that's Diggory. "She was wonderfully brave and strong. She's what I call a queen. Well, I do hope she's going to tell us a story about this place." And she did tell them certain things as they went along. "That is the door to the dungeon. That is the door to the dungeons," she would say. Or, "That passage leads to the principal torture chambers. Or, "This was the old banqueting hall where my great-grandfather had several hundred nobles to feast and killed them all before he had drunk their fill." They had rebellious thoughts. They came at last into a hall larger and loftier than anything they had held yet. Than anything they had yet seen, from its size and from the great doors at the far doors at the far end. Diggory thought that now at last they must be coming to the main entrance. In this he was quite right. The doors were all dead black, either ebony or some black metal which was not found in our world. They were fastened with great bars, most of them too high to reach, and all too heavy to lift. He wondered about how they would get out. The Queen let go of his hand and raised her arm. She drew herself up to her full height and stood rigid. Then she said something which they couldn't understand, but it sounded horrid, and made an action as if she was throwing something towards the door, and those high, heavy doors trembled for a second as if they were made of silk, and then crumbled away, till there was nothing left of them but a heap of dust on the threshold. "Whew!" whistled Diggory. "Has your master magician, your uncle, power like mine?" asked the Queen, firmly seizing Diggory's hand again. "But I shall know later. In the meantime, remembering what you have seen, this is what happens to things and people who stand in my way." Much more light than they had ever yet seen in that country was pouring in through the now empty doorway, and when the Queen let them out through it, they were not surprised to find themselves in the open air. The wind that blew their faces was cold, yet somehow stale. They were looking from a high terrace, and there was a great landscape out below. Low down and near the horizon hung a great red sun, far bigger than our sun. Diggory felt at once that it was also older than ours. A sun near the end of its life, weary looking down upon that world. To the left of the sun, and higher up, there was a single star, big and bright. Those were the only two things that had been seen in the dark sky. They made a dismal group, and on the earth, in every direction, as far as the eye could reach, there spread a vast city in which there was no living thing to be seen. And all the temples, towers, palaces, and pyramids, and bridges cast long and disastrous-looking shadows in the light of that withered sun. Once a great river had flowed through the city, but the water had long since vanished, and there was only now a wide ditch of grey dust. "Look well on which has seen, which no eyes will ever see again," said the Queen. "Such was Charn, that great city, the city of kings, the wonder of the world, perhaps of all worlds. Does your uncle rule as great a city as this boy?" "Well, no," said Diggory. He was going to explain that Uncle Andrew did not rule any cities, but the Queen went on. "It is silent now, but I have stood here when the whole air was full of the noise of Charn. The trampling of feet, the creaking of wheels, and the cracking of whips, the groaning of slaves, and the thunder of chariots, and the sacrificial drums beating in the temples. I have stood there, but that was near the end, when the roar of battle went up from every street, and the river of Charn ran red." She paused and added, "All in one moment, one woman blotted it out forever." "Who?" said Diggory in a faint voice, but he hardly guessed the answer. "I," said the Queen. "I, Jadis, last queen, but the queen of the world." The two children stood silent, shivering in the cold wind. "It was my sister's fault. It was my sister's fault," said the Queen. "She drove me to it. May the curse of all the powers rest upon her forever. At any moment I was ready to make a peace, yes, to spare her life too, only if only she would yield to me the throne. But she would not. Her pride has destroyed this whole world. Even after the war had begun, there was solemn promise that neither side would use magic, but when she broke her promise, what could I do? Fool! As if she not know that I had more magic than she. She even knew that I had the secret of the deplorable word. Did she think she was always weakling, that I would not use it?" "What was it?" said Diggory. "That was the secret of secrets," said the Queen. "It had long been known to the great King of Kings of our races that there was a word of which, spoken with the proper ceremonies, would destroy all living things except the one who spoke it. But the ancient kings were weak and soft-hearted, and bound themselves to all who would come after them, with great oaths, never to seek after the knowledge of that word. But I learned it in a secret place, and paid a terrible price to learn it. I did not use it until she forced me to. I fought to overcome her by every other means. I poured out the blood of my armies like water." "Beast!" muttered Polly. "The last great battle," said the Queen, "raged on for 3 days here in Charn itself. For 3 days I looked upon it from this very spot. I did not use my power until the last of my soldiers had fallen, and that accursed woman, my sister, and still the head of her rebels, was halfway up those great stairs that led up to the city of the terrace. Then I waited till we were so close that we could see one another's faces. She flashed her horrible, wicked eyes upon me and said, "Victory!" Yes, I said victory, but not yours. Then I spoke the deplorable word. A moment later, I was the only living thing beneath the sun. "But the people!" gasped Diggory. "What people, boy?" asked the Queen.
What are the ordinary people?" said Polly, "who had never done you any harm, and the women and the children and the animals."
"Well, don't you understand?" said the Queen, still speaking to Diggory. "I was the Queen. They were all my people. What else were they for but to do my will?"
"Well, it was rather hard luck on them, all the same," he said.
"I had forgotten that you are only a common boy. How should you understand the reasons of state? Well, you must learn, child, that would be wrong for that would be wrong for any of the common people is not wrong in a great for queen such as I. The weight of the world is on our shoulders. We must be freed from all rules. Ours is a high and lonely destiny." Diggory suddenly remembered that Uncle Andrew had used those exact same words, but they sounded much grander when the Queen Jadis said them. Perhaps because Uncle Andrew was not 7 feet tall and dazzlingly beautiful.
"When did you do... and what do you do then?" said Diggory.
Well, I had already cast strong spells on the hall where the images of my ancestors sit, and the force of those spells was that I should sleep among them, like an image myself, and needed neither food nor fire, though for 1,000 years, till one came and struck the bell and awoke me.
"Well, what was the deplorable word that made the sun like that?" asked Diggory.
"Well, like what?" said Jadis.
"Well, so big and red and so cold."
"It has always been so," said Queen Jadis, "at least for hundreds of thousands of years. Have you sort of a different sun in your world?"
"Yeah, it's smaller and yellower. It gives a good deal more heat."
The Queen gave a long drawn "Ah," and Diggory saw on her face that same hungry and greedy look which he had seen lately on Uncle Andrew's. So, she said, "yours is a younger world." She paused for a moment and looked one more at the deserted city, and if she was sorry. She paused for a moment once more to look at the deserted city, and if she was sorry for all the evil she had done there, she certainly didn't show it, and then said, "Now let us be going. It is cold here at the end of the ages."
"Going where?"
asked both the children. "Where?" repeated Jadis in surprise. "To your world, of course." Polly and Diggory looked at each other aghast. Polly had disliked the Queen from the first, and even Diggory, now that he had heard the story, felt that he had seen quite as much of her as he wanted. Certainly she was not at all the sort of person you would want to take home, and if they did themselves, and if they did not, all the same, if they did not, all the sort of person would like you. And if they did not like, they did not know how they could. If they did, they did not know how they could. Jeez, God Almighty! What in the fuck is that? What they wanted was to get away themselves. But Polly couldn't get at her ring, and of course, Diggory couldn't go without her. Diggory got very red in the face and stammered,
Our world. Well, I didn't know you wanted to go there.
What else would you sent here not to fetch me? What else were you sent here for if not to fetch me? Asked Jadis.
Well, I'm sure I wouldn't like it. You wouldn't like it in our world at all,
said Diggory.
It's not here. It's not the same sort of place, is it, Polly? It's very dull, with not worth seeing, really.
It will soon be worth seeing when I rule it, answered the Queen.
Oh, but you can't, said Diggory. It's not like that. Well, they wouldn't let you know.
The Queen gave a contemptuous smile. Many great kings, she said, thought they couldn't stand against the House of Charn, but they all fell, and their very names have been forgotten. Foolish boy, do you think that I, with my beauty and magic, will not have your whole world at my feet at a year's past? Prepare your incantations and take me there at once.
Well, that's perfectly frightful. Well, this is perfectly frightful, said Diggory to Polly.
Perhaps you fear for this uncle of yours, said Jadis, but if he honours me duly, he shall keep his life and his throne. I am not coming to fight against him. He must be a very good magician if he has found how to send you here. Is he the king of your whole world, or only part?
He isn't king of anywhere, said Diggory.
You are lying, said the Queen. Does not magic always go with royal blood? Who ever heard of a commoner being a magician? I can see the truth, whether you speak it or not. Your uncle is the great king or great enchanter of your world, and by his art he has seen the shadow of my face in some magic mirror or some enchanted pool, and for the love of my beauty he has made me a potent spell which shook your world, to its foundation, and sent you across vast gulf between your world, from world to world, to ask my favour and bring me to him. Answer me, is that not how it was?
Well, not exactly, said Diggory.
Not exactly, shouted Polly.
Why, it's absolute bosh from beginning to end.
Minions! Cried the Queen, turning enraged on Polly and seizing her by the hair, at the very top of her head, where it hurts most. But in so doing she let go of both the children's hands. Now! Shouted Diggory, and quick! Quick! Shouted Polly. They plunged their hands into their pockets, and they did not even need to put the rings on. The moment they touched them, the whole of the dreary world vanished from their eyes. They were rushing upward, and a warm green light growing nearer overhead. We know where that's leading. Next time we go to chapter 6, the beginning of Uncle Andrew's troubles. Frail old Andrew and Queen Jadis. All right, that was wonderful. Love and kisses, Evvie.